amazing Krystel Knowles. So we're going to give her a round of applause. Two-time Emmy-nominated journalist. Through her original series, Cosmic Girls, The Mind Flying the Mission, Krystel is amplifying the voices of women shaping the future of space. Her storytelling bridges launch pads and living rooms, inspiring girls worldwide to see themselves in STEM. Krystel proves that when we tell the right stories, we don't just document history, we help create it. So she is going to be moderating our amazing panel for tonight. So I'll leave it over to you, Krystel.
Thank you so much. That was a great introduction. Exciting night. You founded SpaceKids Global. Tell me what?
You know, I started SpaceKids Global back on March 2015, and it was really about Richard Branson. He said, if your dreams don't scare you, they're too small. And then I had an opportunity to meet Dr. Michio Kaku, who said, if you don't have kids in math and science by the age of 7, you're going to lose them. And it is so important that we reach the elementary school kids early on, because they're the next generation of space travelers. And if we don't prepare them to live on the planet, we're going to be left behind. So we actually started to really look at education differently. You know, the system was built in the industrial era, and it doesn't work today. We need to have hands-on projects. We believe that if we bring hands-on projects to these kids, they become participators, not spectators. And we make learning fun again.
Kim, this question to you. You have done a lot of research when it comes to leadership focused on gender integration in combat arms and women's retention across military branches, but you also authored a chapter in a book. Not only that, this year you were part of a documentary that's very history-making. Could you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah.
Sure. So for a little bit of context, so I am currently serving in the Space Force, but before that I served for about 14 years in the U.S. Army. I was a combat arms officer. I served in U.S. artillery, so cannons, rockets, mortars. This was before the combat ban for women was lifted, which was in 2013. So there was a combat ban, which meant that women could not serve on the front lines. That was lifted until 2013. And I also served in an experimental program. It was called the Cultural Support Team Program, in which a select number of women, not many, were allowed to assess and serve with Special Forces, U.S. Army Rangers, and the Navy SEALs who are deployed in Afghanistan in clandestine missions. And again, this was before the U.S. ban was lifted. There was a book written about it called Ashes War, and the documentary that we're talking about was released. Because of that, some of the atmospherics and data that were released about that helped inform the policy in which former Secretary of Defense Panetta made the decision to lift that ban in 2013.
And part of our next generation, Natalie, thank you so much for being here. You were one of 2 recipients for a prestigious Barry Goldwater Scholarship, which is impressive, and I would love to ask you, how much work would it take to put into that? But not only that, how can young women in STEM stay motivated?
So the scholarship took about a year from start to finish. I got told by a friend who got an email about it, and she forwarded it to me, and she was like, I think you should apply to this. Like, this sounds just like you. And I was like, I don't think this is me at all. But so I went to the prestigious award, and I talked to them, and I worked on my application. And it took a lot of revisions, but it was motivating to do because it made me realize that I loved what I was doing. And it also made me write down the path I was doing, and it made me proud of myself for looking at the challenges. It made me reflect on my path that I was on. And for staying motivated in STEM for young girls, I really think it's community. I have found that Embry Riddle, my people, and I really think when I'm feeling down, when I'm starting to get burnt out, they are the ones that uplift me and keep me motivated. They remind me of who I am. And so I think finding your community is just the most important thing you can do. either when you're young or even when you're in grad school. I think that's the most
What advice would you give to the next generation of women, and how can you keep them from not being motivated or thinking that this field is not for them?
How do we keep women engaged? You know, it's a very interesting and difficult challenge because we are in the Girl Boy Network. I'm looking at it from when I went to space on my first mission, was back in March 31st, 2022. And Sally went up in 1983. And I brought some statistics, thank you, Marianne. 39 years later, I was launched into space. I became the 74th woman to cross over the climate line, the 599th person to leave this planet in history. And when you think about from 2022 to 2025, from 74 to now there's 105, we are making progress, but not that quickly. We have to get the girls engaged in every industry, but especially in the space industry. Right now, I think the statistics are like 12% of women who have left this planet. Think about it, 12%. And I think it's just a little over 700 out of the 8 billion people on this planet. I sit on the Purdue University Engineering Advisory Council, and the purpose of them inviting me on the board was the fact that we need more women in engineering. Why is the ratio 1 to 10? And then, once they graduate, the longevity is a year.
Bless you.
What is the problem? I went around the country, I interviewed all CEOs, women executives, and the number one thing was isolation. The other thing was being spoken over, not being included. Okay, so these are our problems. Where do we find the solution to these? Number one, we have to support women. We have to do mentoring. We have to have organizations that will reach out to women, especially in the early ages, from middle school up. And if we make these slight little adjustments, I think we're going to see a lot of inspiration.
Kim, I saw you agreeing with what you're saying. And I wanted to ask you, what challenges have you faced as a woman in a traditionally male-dominated field, and how do you overcome them and support people coming into that field?
Yeah, so, yes, preach. Yeah. My goodness. Yeah. Well, read my thesis. I talk about this a lot. Also, yeah, so shameless plug. Okay, so some challenges. I'll say the theme I'll give you for the challenges that I went through, because as you can tell, I served with Special Forces, Rangers, Navy SEALs. Talk about male-dominated, all males. I did not serve with a woman for the first, 10 years of my career. Wow. So talk about isolation. But the theme is, I would say, yeah, but I was very, very good at my job. When I say I was good at artillery, I was the distinguished honor graduate. I could lay fires like nobody else, and I say that with complete ego. I was the best. Yeah, but like I said, there was political, policy, institutional, systemic barriers in place. So yeah, I was really good at what I could do, but I could not serve on the front lines. I could not lead soldiers in combat. It just could not happen. And my leaders told me that. Yeah, but, once I was able to find that loophole and go to combat in that experimental program, and I'll give a small anecdotal story. There was a Special Forces team sergeant. He went through my resume, he looked at, some of my battle metrics, and he told me point blank, hey, LT, Lieutenant, I see what you can provide. You're really good at laying down mortars. You're providing intelligence on the battlefield. You can talk to the women. Afghanistan when I can. So literally something he cannot do. But you're a woman, the guys out here are lonely, they're staring at you, you're a distraction. You're quite frankly a distraction, you're gonna get us killed. Yeah, but that's really hard to deal with when you're doing everything correct, but you still can't overcome those institutional barriers. So how do you overcome that? You can't control some things. So what can you control? You have to keep working hard, right? So Sharon brought up a good point, the retention, walking away after a year. The whole purpose of trailblazing is that trails are hard to blaze. It's hard. You have to be resilient, and someone has to do it. You have to try to find those mentors, those advocates. There are good people in those pockets that will help you blaze that trail for you, and you have to keep working hard and control the things you can control. So I was really good at what I did. I had to keep being good at what I did because that's what I could control. So yeah, you think I'm a distraction? Well, I'll tell you, I'm not interested. You're not my type. But I'm still going to lay down orders for you. I'm still going to provide the intelligence you need, but I'm not going to do all that other stuff. That's what I could control. The other thing I would say is self-advocacy, right? Statistically, women in the corporate world are less likely to negotiate for themselves, for salary raises, for opportunities compared to their male counterparts. Advocate for yourself. Speak up for yourself. Because nobody else is going to do that for you. That's how I overcame. That's how I found that opportunity. There are barriers in place, so when you're blazing a trail, there could be a rock in front of you or a gap. Just like water running down a hill, that water's going to find a way to get downhill. Find a different path. So there's an institutional barrier in front of me where I couldn't lead an artillery unit the way I wanted. I found a loophole. There's an experimental program. I found a way around it, and I led troops in combat. So just find a way. There is a way. Just keep asking the question and advocate for yourself.
Good.
This is like something we're talking about in the past. This happens every day. I've had the privilege of training with NASA, with NASCAR in Philadelphia. I've gone to Star City, Russia. I've trained with the Russian cosmonauts. Recently on my mission, I was female. That's what I call it. And I turned to a crewmate and I said, "Did you just female me?" And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I did." The point is, we have to change the message, and we've got to start doing it today.
Speaking about breaking down barriers, Natalie, you're coming into this industry, you're an undergrad. Have you faced any challenges being a woman in the aerospace industry and just making a mark for yourself? And if so, please explain.
Oh, hi. I remember, in high school, I got told by an engineering professor how I wasn't worth STEM, that I didn't have the mind for it, so go be a teacher. And I remember being so upset. I was like, okay, now I'm pretty wrong. And so I took a gap year to solidify what I wanted to do, because I wanted to make sure when I went into STEM, I was confident and I knew my path. And while at Embry, I've had a lot of great resources, but I've joined a lot of male-dominated things. Embry is a very male-dominated school. And so I remember I went and joined my first research project. I was the only girl. It was 15 guys. And I was the only research. They were all engineers. And I was like, hey, guys, you can't do that on a life support system. And they all looked at me, and then they turned around. And I was like, I literally was like, I could sit here and sit back down and let my voice just go with the wind. But I got up and I went and stood in front of them. And I was like, hey, guys, this cannot happen. And it's really hard to find your voice. I'm super introverted. I try to be super nice. And so when I first got to Embry, to learn how to advocate for yourself was the hardest skill. But once you start doing it, it feels like a fire. Like it's like in your soul, you feel ablaze once you start finding your voice and just realizing you are important. Like, we are doing amazing things. I know so many girls who are just absolute trailblazers in the field right now, and just also supporting each other because we all know the battle that we have in STEM. And so I just think it's so important for like nights like these for us all to get together and just reinforce that we're all doing a good job despite all the barriers and boundaries that we're pushing against.
Well, we're out of time for this portion because the awards are next. I want to thank all of my panelists for being here.
If you have a Space Coast related story, send me a message on Facebook at Krystel or Cosmos. And if you'd like to empower girls to reach for the stars, visit cosmicgirls.org to donate or learn about the 6 Girls, 6 Continents competition.